ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with the book Greatness of Saranagati, and we've come to the point of discussing about Saranagati and the works and lives of the Alwars. Alwars and Saranagati. In the Bhagavad Puranam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, 38, verses 38 to 40, it said that great devotees of Lord Vishnu will appear in South India on the banks of the Tamrapani Kritamala, which is the Vaigai, which runs through Madurai, the Payashvini, Palar, the Kaveri, which runs through Sri Rangam and Trichinopalli, and the Mahanadi, or the Periyar. The word Alwar means one who has deep intuitive knowledge of God and one who is immersed in the contemplation of God. The works of the Alwars are full of intense and devoted love for Lord Vishnu. This love is the foundation for the later systematic doctrine of Saranagati. Alwars were 12 in number, and they belonged to different castes, and one of them was of the Panar caste, and Andal, one of them, was a woman. As the name implies itself implies, the Alwars were expert divers into divinity and were deeply immersed in love of God. Their poetic utterances were spontaneous outpourings of their intuitional experience of the Lord, especially in the easily accessible form of permanent incarnations or idols or archavigraha, the deities in the temple. They were born mystics, unlike the later acharyas who acquired their insight by laborious process of self-purification and contemplation. Their works were anthologized and known as the Nalayir Divya Prabandham. The word Nalayir means Ayur means 1,000, Nala means 4, so Nalayir means 4,000, Divya means divine. Prabandham is the name of the verses or the songs, the verses that they wrote in Tamil. This Prabandham helps for the later Sri Vaishnava acharyas to make a systematic formulation of the concept of Saranagati, and they made a profound influence on all acharyas of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. The works of the Alwars are sacred, and for this reason they're called as Dravida Veda. So just as the Vedas, the Shruti Vedas in Sanskrit are considered sacred, so this is called Dravida Veda. Dravida means southern India. It's called Dravida Desha, or the place of Dravida, the country of Dravida. So the works of the Alwars are otherwise called Dravidopanishad. Sometimes it's called Dravidopanishad. The spiritual experience of the Alwars, the mysticism, is enshrined in the Tamil Veda, the Dravidopanishad. The Prabandham contains mystic wisdom of Saranagati. In the Srivachana Bhushanam, which is a book by Pilalakacharya, it is said that Alwars did Saranagati, or surrendered to the Lord, in different places in the Acha avatar only. So at different places, they went to the temples and they surrendered. All their works are a narration of their individual experience of love, devotion, and surrender, Saranagati, to God. In other words, they are God-intoxicated saints. Their approach of God, or to God, is filled with feelings, emotions, and surrender. They sang songs in an inspired manner and often believed that they themselves had no hand in their composition, but it was God who spoke through them. Their songs are often sung to the accompaniment of cymbals, small hand cymbals, and intoxicating melody of music as peculiar to the Alwars and entirely different from the traditional music then current in South India. Their experiences of God are comparable to the parents' love for their children or a lady's or a woman's love of her beloved. Their only desire is to become, to get connected to God again, to become unison with God. So the aspect of total surrender and clinging to God are dominant features of their spiritual life. Such experience is possible only through a revelation. This experience is otherwise called Sakshatkara Anubhava. Sakshatkara means that face-to-face feeling of being face-to-face with God. So they lived in the worship of God and enjoyed in the company of God. Their mystic experience is a direct and immediate love of God. Ramanuja was greatly influenced by this mystic experience, both in his life and in his works. Ramanuja, one of the names of Ramanuja is called Tirupavai Jir. Tirupavai is 30 verses, a composition of one of the Alwars, Andal, the Lady Alwar, of 30 verses where she speaks about Lord Krishna and the gopis in Vrindavan. So Ramanuja is so much like that, they used to call him Tirupavai Jir, or the Swami who likes that so much. The unstinted bhakti and Saranagati or surrender are witnessed in the lives of the Alwars. The bhakti and Saranagati movements in India owe their origin to the Alwars. Their philosophy played an important part in shaping of the religious life of the people of South India. They're 12 in number, so it was mentioned before. So here they're going to enumerate the Alwars. So the first three Alwars are Pogai, Budit, Pei Alwar, and then the fourth is Tirumalasai Alwar. Then Nam Alwar, Kulashekar Alwar, Pere Alwar, Tondaripodi Alwar, Tirupan Alwar, Tirumangai Alwar, Andal, and Madhurakavi Alwar. Not exactly in chronological order there. Usually Tirumangai is last. Of course, Madhurakavi Alwar was a disciple of Nam Alwar, so he goes with Nam Alwar. And the rest of them are pretty much in the right order, chronologically. So now we're going to hear about the first three, the Mudal Alwars. They are Pogai, Budit, and Pei Alwars, and Saranagati, and surrender. The consequences of practicing bhakti and Saranagati can be illustrated from the episode of the earliest Alwars, namely Pogai, Budit, and Pei Alwar. There is an interesting incident which happened in the lives of these three Alwars. Once, these three Alwars were independently, not knowing each other, living in forests, moving from place to place. A big storm broke out, and all three were forced to be under one common roof for shelter, one after another in Tirukovalur. So the shelter, which was given by Mriganda Rishi, was so small that it could not accommodate even one person. But three of them, who came one by one, stood and waited for the rain and storm to stop. So first of all, Pogai Alwar came, and he took permission from the Rishi to lie down on the porch of his hut, which was just enough for one person to lie. And then Budit Alwar came along and said, where one person can lie, two people can sit. So if you sit, we can both sit here instead of lying. So they both sat there. Then when Pei Alwar, the third Alwar, came along, he said, well, where one person can sit, one person can lie, two people can sit, three people can stand. So they all stood. And then when they were all three standing on the porch there, then they felt a fourth person there. And that was the Supreme Lord Sriman Narayana, who came to be with his devotees. So at that time, they huddled together and felt the presence of a fourth person, although he was not seen. And that unseen person, they concluded, was none other than God, with Lakshmi, came there to reveal himself to those three Alwars. Pogai Alwar realized the God with the path of intuitive knowledge or parabhakti. Budit Alwar realized God with the path of intensive devotion or paragyana. Pei Alwar realized God with the path of intuitive transcendental devotion or paramabhakti. So these are different stages of devotion, which are talked about in Sri Vaishnavism. To go into more detail about these different stages, there are other books which we can look at. Thus, these three Alwars have shown different ways of worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord by composing three prabandhams. So the prabandhams are called by the first Alwar, second Alwar, and third Alwar, Pogai, Budit, and Pei Alwars. They're called respectively, they're called Tiruvandadis, each one of them. So one is called Mudal Tiruvandadi, second one Nirandam Tiruvandadi, third one is Mundram Tiruvandadi. So Mudal, Yirandam, and Munram, they mean first, second, and third in Tamil. So that's all. That's there. And the Tiruvandari is the type of verse that was that they made, respectively. Okay, so Pogai praises God in his Prabandha and says, "O mind, meditate on the Lord, the Supreme Being, Uttama Purusha, and that he protects us and he resides in the mind of meditators, that he is lying on the milky ocean, that he resides in Venkatam, meaning Tirupati, that he is all-pervading in the hearts of everyone." While showing the importance of Saranagati or surrender, Pogai Alwar says that one can dispel his karmas, or the bad reactions from his deeds, good and bad, diseases and sins by self-surrender to Lord Rama, who destroyed Lanka at one time by his arrow. So Lord Rama, of course, killed Ravana, and he didn't actually destroy Lanka, but he killed the king of Lanka, Ravana, who kidnapped his wife Sita. So that story is in the Itihasa called Ramayana, story of Lord Rama. So Buddha Dalwar describes the experience of bhakti in the first verse of his Prabandha. He says, bhakti is a lamp bowl, so like a bowl with aspirations as ghee. So if you have a ghee lamp, you have ghee in a bowl and you have a wick. The mind has melted out as the wick mind. The melting soul, have I lighted the bright flame of devotion to Narayana, revealed in the Tamil language. Buddha Alwar again cites the incident of Gajendra, the king of the elephants, who did Saranagati or surrender at before fading away of Sriman Narayana, for submitting lotus flowers at his feet and not for protection from the crocodile. So the story of Gajendra is given also in the Bhagavad Purana, and may also be given in different Puranas, that Gajendra, the king of the elephants, was being attacked by a crocodile in the pond, and he could not get away. When he realized that he was going to be killed by the crocodile, he took a lotus flower and he offered it symbolically in meditation to the Supreme Lord Sriman Narayana. So here the point that the Alwar is saying that the elephant didn't think actually that Lord Narayana should save him. He didn't pray for protection from the crocodile, but simply wanted to offer service to the Lord before the crocodile killed him. He gave up his life. He would be unable to do his service. So in this hymn, he has also shown Saranagati or surrender. This is an illustrative example of Anukulya Susankalpa. Anukulya Susankalpa is the first anga, or first aspect of Saranagati or surrender. And Anukulya Susankalpa means the vow to follow the will of the Lord, what the Lord wants, to do everything that the Lord wants, because we are his servants. So Payalwa narrates his experiences of God in his Prabandham as follows. By seeing God, I have destroyed my increasing sins. And in another verse, he says, God is the medicine to our hell existence. He also enumerated the theme of Saranagati or surrender in the following verse. Questioning not whether good or bad, seek thou the beautiful feet of the Lord, on whose chest is worn the fragrant, honey-laden tulsi. All thy sins will immediately vanish. This shows the Mahavishvasha, which is another important anga or limb of surrender or Saranagati. So Mahavishvasha means great faith. Someone has great faith. Tirumalasai Alwar and Saranagati. Tirumalasai Alwar was an Amsa. Amsa means an avatar, or an Amsa means a partial incarnation of Chakradalwa. Chakradalwa means the Sudarshana discus weapon of Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha. He revealed that he knew God thoroughly well. He composed two prabandhams. They're called Namugam Tiruvandari. So Namugam Tiruvandari is actually, so we have Mudal, Nirandam, Munram, and Nanmugam. Namugam means fourth. So it's the fourth Tiruvandari because he was the fourth Alwar. Right? So Namugam Tiruvandari and Tiruchanda Virutam. He propagates the idea that God will protect the good and punish evil. right? This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. Pritranaya sadhunam vinashaya tuduskritam. I protect the godly people, and the ungodly people, I destroy them. So God is the repository of love and beauty. Human existence is dependent completely on divine mercy. The important aim of jiva, the individual soul, is to attain the permanent release from the clutches of samsara, that is the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age, through Saranagati only, or through surrender to God only. The only way to moksha is through absolute and unconditional self-surrender to the Lord. He says, no mental suffering will visit one if one accepts Madhusudana, which is the name for Krishna or for Sriman Narayana, the killer of the Madhu demon, as the sole refuge, for God is man's wealth. Tirumalasai Alvar advises to the worrying mind to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. He says, O good mind, hast thou not seen the Supreme Being? Is he not always present there with thee? I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to mean. Know, though, that the unequaled Lord is the protector of me and of those like me. About himself, he says, I have made surrender of my vocation. My whole time is taken up with the praise of the Lord. In one of the hymns, he narrates the origin of Saranagati, right, as preached by Shiva to the four seers. So there are many agamas, there are many books and stories in the Puranas and other Shmiti literatures, right, where Lord Shiva is speaking to these four sages. These are called the Saranagati, Sanatan, and Sananda Kumara. These are four Kumaras or young sages that were spoken to by Shiva. So Rudra of right austerity taught the four. Oh, now actually, it's not the four Kumaras. Sorry, it's four other sages. Here he's saying who they are: Agastya, Pulasya, Daksha, and Markandeya. Okay, so I was wrong about that. Under the shade of the banyan tree in the previous eon, the way to surrender to the Lord, who measured the world and is reposing in the ocean, meaning the ocean of milk usually, like that. That is Sriman Narayana. Okay, so he was talking about an episode where Lord Shiva, or Rudra, as he's also known, was speaking to these four sages, Agastya, Pulasya, Daksha, and Markandeya. According to him, an individual effort to attain moksha is only secondary because God's mercy is flowing, and it does not wait for the individual's effort to grant boons, right? So God's mercy is causes, and it will flow like a river. So it's just a matter of getting into the river, right? And being carried along with the current. These are the elements of Siddhopaya and Sadhyopaya, which are important parts of Saranagati. Siddhopaya means the perfection, the Upaya means the means, Siddha means perfection, Sadhya means the goal, and Upaya means the means. So the Lord is both the means and he's also the goal of surrender. Yeah, so some of these sages like Markandeya has his own Purana, and we have some of these other sages, Agastya, Pulasya. Agastya is very famous in South India. There's an Agastya Samhita also about Lord Rama. Pulasya and Daksha, these are great rishis. Okay, so now we're going to hear we've heard about Pogai Budadpay Alwars, who are called the Mudal Alwars, the first Alwars. Then Pay Alwar's disciple Tirumalasai Alwar, right, who also was the fourth Alwar. And now we're going to hear about King Kulashekara Alwar. So Kulashekara was a king. So they say of the Chera kingdom or somewhere near Kerala. For the first time in the works of Kulashekara Alwar, the elements of Saranagati are found. According to him, the path of Saranagati or surrender involves 5 angas and 1 angi. So angas means parts and angi means the whole, right? So there's a very famous verse which comes in Ahibudnya Samhita, also in Lakshmi Tantra of the Pancharatra Agamas, Anukulya Sasankapa Paripuli Sivarjana, and it goes on to list all of them and define Saranagati or surrender. This is except this verse is quoted by Rupa Goswami, this verse is quoted by Vedanta Deshika. So across different sampradayas of Vaishnavas, this verse is understood to explain about the different parts of surrender. So they are Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam, Mahavishvasam Goptra Varnam, Karpanyam and Atmanikshepa. The first 5 are Angas and the last one is Angi, or is nothing but Sharanagati. So the first 5 are the parts, and the whole thing, they describe the last part, Atmanikshepa. Atmanikshepa means Sharanagati. So Atmanikshepa, Paranyasa, Nyasa Vidya, these are different names for Sharanagati or surrender to the Lord. So don't be confused, it all means the same thing. Property also means the same thing. The first Anga of Sharanagati is propagated in the form of Anukulyasya Sankalpa. We also talked about that just a little bit with Gajendra. It involves in identifying the devotees as representatives of God and serving him with utmost respect. According to Pilulokacharya, according to Perivachan Pillai, Anukulya means that one who is lovable to God as well as lovable to Bhagavatas, the Vaishnavas or the devotees of God, right? Because so we call God Bhagavan, the possessor of all great qualities and great auspicious unlimited qualities, Ananta Kalyana Gunas. And those who love Bhagavan are called Bhagavatas. So the first decade, or the first 10 verses of Perumal Tirumoli is one of the Alwars. Perumal Tirumoli is by King Kulashekara Alwar. Speaks about the interest created in the matter of love towards God. And the second decade, the second 10 verses, speaks about the interest created in the matter of love towards the Bhagavatas, towards the devotees of God. So if you love God, you must also love his servants, his creation, and whatever he's created, and he's created everything. So you must also love this world. You must also love the devotees, you sort of all sentient beings. You should have compassion and love for all sentient beings, is the point. The second Anga, so that's the first Anga. Anukulyasya Sankalpa is following not only being favorable towards God and doing what he wants, but also what the other Vaishnavas also want. The second Anga, namely Pratikulyasya Varjana. So Anukulyasya Sankalpa is what we do, and Pratikulyasya Varjana is what we don't do. So Pratikulyasya Varjana is not indulging in any activity that might displease the will of God. So Kulashekara Alwar, so this is what's spoken about in the second 10 verses of Perumal Tirumoli. Right? So Kulashekara in his Perumal Tirumoli third, so now we're going on third decade, the third 10 verses of him speaks about the renunciation of the company of the sinful and seeking the company of the good, meaning the devotees, right? Seeking the company of the Vaishnavas and giving up the company of those persons who are against bhakti, who are against property, who are against Vaishnavism, right? The asuras. So the renunciation of the company of the sinful and seek the company of the good, which is nothing but the second condition of Sharanagati, namely Pratikulyasya Varjana. So naturally, if you give up the association with people who are not Vaishnavas, who are not surrendered, who are not devoted to God, so naturally that is Pratikulyasya Varjana. In this context, he says, I shall not join those who have love for their bodies. I shall not move with those who are unable to leave the contemplation of delicate waisted women. I shall not join those who are Cupid-like, right, who have lusty desires. I shall not join those who seek food and clothing or seek to live in this world. In other words, material possessions. With those who seek low pleasures, I shall not join. On the other hand, I shall set my mind on the Lord and become absorbed in devotion. Karpanya is the next section. It's the next part of surrender. Karpanya means helplessness. It is another essential anga or essential part of Sharanagati or surrender. which is capable of invoking the Lord's mercy. This anga or karpanya is shown by King Kulashekara in his Paramal Tirumali as follows. He says, I am like a baby which weeps, yet thinks of the mother's grace. Though with anger, fierce, she has thrust it from her face. Even like a born girl who knows only her husband knows, though deeds such as men may mock her lover does. So will I sing, though thou will not be my lord, thy anklets tingling. Like a great bird on a ship, am I, which goes around and sees no shore and comes at last back over the tossing sea and perches on the ship's, I think it must be mast, returning to the Lord's feet. So there are a few spelling mistakes here. Again, he says, though the bad people, world-interested people, call me mad, they are to me madmen. The next Danga, or the next part of Saranagati, is called Mahavishvasa, or having great faith. It is revealed by King Kulashekara in that God is as mother to a baby, as a husband to his wife, as a physician to his patient, as a shipmast to the bird in mid-ocean. Right? So a bird that's in mid-ocean needs to rest, so it comes down on the mast of a ship. He saw Lord Rama in everything, in Kulashekara, and everywhere, and considered that the constant chanting of the very name of this great repository, Lord Rama, would make the vast ocean of the life cycle a mere puddle. So this samsara, wheel of birth and death, old age and disease, seems like a very great ocean to cross over. But actually, when we take shelter of the Lord, it seems to us just like a small puddle which we can easily step across. So the greatness of King Kulashekara lies in his supreme faith and longing towards Lord Ranganatha, the deity of Lord Srimanarayana in Sri Rangam, by beholding him, singing in his praise, offering flowers at his feet, folding palms in obeisance before him, prostrating before him, and rolling down around him in great delight. So in South India, sometimes the people also do this. They prostrate fully on the floor in front of God and in the temple, and they'll also do what's called rolling dandavats. They'll roll also around and around clockwise around the deity while prostrated fully. Kulashekara Alwa prays for the grace of Lord Venkateshwara in the Tirumala Hills in Tirupati. He wishes to be a bird or a fish, a bearer of a spittoon. He wishes even to be an insentient, step, one of the steps on which treads the servants of Godhead. There are many steps that go up the mountain to reach the Tirupati temple, Tirumala temple. So he says, let me just be a step. Let me be the step in the temple that all the devotees place their feet on when they come to see the Lord. When they enter the sanctum sanctorum of the deity. So this is from Tirumali 4:8. This reveals his ardent desire to be near to the Lord in every sense. And it is an expression of his devotion. We can also see Tirumali 4:5 and 4:6. He also seeks the gift of uninterrupted meditation, like a continual flow of streams in the hills, right? So in the mountains, there are always these mountain streams that are continually flowing, they're perennial. The achievement of a complete steadfastness and passivity, resembling even a stone-like in consciousness, so unconsciousness, let's say, along with a dedicated interior solely devoted to the divine Lord of all creation is a remarkable one. Okay, so that was about Kulashekara, a little bit about Kulashekara Alwa. There are many stories of all these Alwas, of course, which you can read. If anybody needs a book about the Alwars and their different lives and things, there's a very good book by Alkondaveli Govindachari about the holy lives of the Alwars or the Dravida saints. So you can easily get it downloaded online freely. So Namalwar and Saranagati. So surrender and Namalwar is considered to be the head of the Alwars, the chief Alwar. So Namo was a mystic philosopher born in Kurakur, right? Now in Tirunelveli district in Tamil Nadu, which is way down the south of the Triangle of India, like down the bottom. He spent his early life in realizing God through intense love. It is known as the divine love stage. He tries to establish a sacred union with God through absolute self-surrender. Namalwar who is rightfully claimed as Prapanajana Kutasta, the greatest of the surrendered soul, right? Has performed Saranagati or surrender and shown the world its importance as a means to moksha. He was considered to be an Amsa, an avatar of Vishvaksena, the commander-in-chief of Lord Krishna's army, or his personal secretary. For this, he eradicates all his desires and evils. His works are Tiruviratam, Tiruvasiryam, Periya Tiruvandari, and Periya Tiruvandari just means also Tiruvandari type verse, but many verses, so it's called Big Tiruvandari. And Tiruvaimoli. Tiruvaimoli is his over 1,100 verses. So it's his magnum opus, Namawar's greatest works. There's a book called Bhagavad Vishayam, which all Vaishnavas are supposed to read and to understand, which explains the Tiruvaimoli. Tiruvaimoli is equated like the Sama Veda of the Dravida Vedas. It is considered to be the greatest part of the Dravida Vedas. So Namawar's whole life was sacrificed for meditation. His disciple, Madhur Kavi Alwar, considers him as his acharya. Professor P.N. Srinivasachari says Namalwar's mysticism is a perfect illustration of the best proof of God is direct intuitive experience of God. So this is probably from a book called Philosophy of Vishishta Dvaita by P.N. Srinivasachari. It's a famous book. It's a classical textbook. It's a basic textbook on Sri Vaishnavism. So according to Namalwar, the path of self-surrender is one of the most early and most direct towards the attainment of the experience of God. It is the only ultimate path. There is no other path to God except through dedicated surrender. He says, the abode of bliss that destroys all fatigue, the abode of knowledge that annuls all ignorance, the Lord of all God's eternals, who have conquered all sloth, his sorrow, dispelling feet do thou seek for refuge. You should seek those for refuge. Finally, Namalwar did Saranagati or surrender with Akinchanya, Ananya Gatitva, and Bhakti Paravasya in three deviations. Vana Mamalai. Vana Mamalai is down there near Tirupungudi, where he's from, right? And there's a very famous Tengalai Sri Vaishnava Mat there called Vana Mamalai Mata. Tirukundandai, and Tiruvallavala. So and the ocean, the Milky Ocean. So this was all done in Namawa didn't actually go anywhere. He sat underneath the tamarind tree and meditated. So he didn't actually go, but he meditated upon all these different divine places where he surrendered to the Lord. Since there is no mention of Pirati means Mahalakshmi or Sri Devi, the goddess, consort of the Supreme Lord, in those places, Namawa Saranagati was not materialized. So part of Saranagati, very important part of Saranagati, is the mediator between the individual soul and the Supreme Lord, and that is Sri Devi, the Lord's consort, who acts like the divine mother. She's our mother, she's the mother of the universe, and she is the divine consort of the Supreme Lord. So just like in a family, the children will surrender to their parents, but they want to get the blessings of the father. They can only get the blessings of the father if the mother also accepts them. So the mother, even if the children have been naughty or they've done some bad things, the mother will feel great compassion on the children and will beg the father to forgive them for any misdeeds that they've done. So this is the same with the Supreme Lord. So he did finally Purna Saranagati. Purna Saranagati means complete surrender at the lotus feet of Lord Venkateshwara in his work, in his meditation, but in his work Tiruvai Moli, which was his magnum opus, in the 6th decade of the 10th centum and the 10th hymn. So there are 10 centums. There are 10. The Tiruvai Moli is 1,000 hymns, 1,000 prabandhas, 1,000 verses. So it's divided up into hundreds. So in the 10th hundred and in the 6th decade, in the 60, in between 60 and 70, right? So we're talking about 960 verses into the 1,000 verses, right? And the 10th hymn, so 900 on the 970th verse was when actually Namal was said to have done his Purna Saranagati, or completed his surrender. The original hymn runs as follows. I'm not going to attempt the Tamil because I don't, my Tamil pronunciation is not very good, but it means this in English. O resident of Tiruvenkata, meaning Lord Balaji, Lord Venkateshwara in Tirupati, Tirumala, reverently sought by the peerless Amaras and sages in their bunches. On your winsome chest is her, the divine mother who from a flower emerged, right? So Lakshmi is said to have emerged from a flower, right? Pankaja. Ever saying that from you she shall not leave a moment apart. So she's always with the Supreme Lord. So on the chest of Lord Venkateshwara, as the Srivat says, is the mark where the Sri Devi, the Supreme Lord's consort, stays. So of incomparable glory, you are the Lord of all the 3 worlds, and at your feet, lovely, this vassal, right, or servant, squarely takes refuge with no other hold. Again, he says, God is the protector of those who surrender at his feet, and adds, Lord is nearer to those who bow to his feet. Bhagawan is the lover of those who seek his feet. These are all quotes from Tiruvai Moli. Namawar narrates his experiences of Sharanagati or surrender when he made Sharanagati at the feet of the deity of Tirumukur. These are all different Divideshims. There are 108 Divideshims that the Alvars have spoken about, including Sri Vaikuntha and the ocean, the Milky Ocean, the ocean of Sweatitude. In this context, he says, there is no moksha or liberation without making self-surrender to Kala Megam. Kala Megam means the Lord, Sriman Narayana, who looks just like a dark monsoon cloud. He's got that complexion, darkish complexion. An important deity in Tirumukur, or Tirumukur, right? Sometimes a K or a G can be pronounced like an H in Tamil. So Tirumukur. There is no other way than the lotus feet of the deity in Tirumukur, which only is the path of salvation. So now we're going to hear about another Alvar. That was about Namalvar and Sharanagati. Now we're going to hear about Tonduradi Podi Alvar. Tonduradi Podi Alvar. Tonduradi Podi, he's also called in Sanskrit Bhaktangi Renu. Tonduradi Podi means the Alvar that took the dust from the feet of the devotees on his head. So Tonduradi Podi Alvar, described in his work Tirumala, his work is called Tirumala, about the nature of sins and his liberation due to ever-loving God. And he says that at the time when he was a gambler and a thief and caught in the net of a woman's fish-like eyes, as was helpless, was it not the beauty of Sri Rangam, Sri Ranganatha, who called him, entered into his mind and made him surrender unto him? He realizes his helplessness and dependence on God. He gives a deep-rooted and heart-burning narration about his helplessness in a hymn as follows. I have no place, nor plot of ground, nor relatives, nor friends on this earth. I have not attained thy lotus feet, O supreme God, O luminous cloud-hued form, Kanna. Kanna, the word Kanna is a name of Krishna. In North India, they say Kannan. In South India also, Kannan. They say in North India, they say Krishna Kanaya. Kanaya means Kannan. Krishna Kanaya Dauji Kabaya. Balaram is his, Dauji is his brother. Kannan. So I implore thee, Lord, residing at Sri Rangam, who else have I except thee to protect me? Earlier, he advised the devotees to do Saranagati at the feet of Lord Krishna, who was a cowherd boy in Krishna avatar, now resplendent in Adishesha as Ranganatha in Sri Rangam. So Sri Rangam is a Sheshashayana Vishnu. He's lying on Adishesha, his supreme serpent, which is his couch or his bed. And that is the form of the deity in Sri Rangam. He's 6 meters long, 18 feet. So here he underlined the superiority of Sharanagati or surrender to a particular supreme deity, Lord Ranganath. And other small deities will not protect devotees all the time. So now we're going to talk about Tirumangai Alwar, chronologically the last Alwar, and his surrender. Tirumangai Alwar, who sung 1,184 hymns on 84 different divinations. So he is the one who has written hymns about the most temples, the most different deities of the Lord, and the most different divine holy places. Did Sharanagati in several divinations, particularly in Tirumala, meaning Lord Venkateshwara Tirupati temple on the top of the hill. This Alwar did Sharanagati by lowering himself and praying for redeeming of his previous karmas in the hymn Taye Tandai Centum 1.9 of his Periya Tirumoli. So he wrote several prabandhas. One of them is called Periya Tirumoli. So Tirumoli, but big Tirumoli. Like that. So before we heard about Periya Tiruvadi, Tiruvandari, but this is Periya Tirumoli. Okay, so anybody who wants to know more about the hymns of the Alwars or to read them in English like that, you just have to get in touch with me, and we can show you. There are some websites, there's some books that you can download. You can read all these hymns for yourself. Here, he considered the Lord as mother, father, and everything. Periyavachan Pillai, who was a great acharya and commentator after Ramanuja, noted in his commentary for this centum, for these 100 verses in the Periya Tirumoli, right? That Alwar, meaning Tirumangai Alwar, prays Madhavane, which denotes that he did Sharanagati through the Purushakara, through the mediator of Pirati, meaning Sri Devi Mahalakshmi, the divine consort of the Lord. In this centum, in these 100 verses, it is said that Tirumangai Alwar did Sharanagati for Ishtaprapti for attaining his desire, In the next centum, in the next 100, starting from 110.10, he, the first centum, 10th decade, 10th verse, he prays for anishta nivriti, or eradication of sins. So similarly, Vishnu Chitta is the name of Peri Alwar, who was the foster father of Andal. Tirupan Alwar, right, who was a Panchama, he was the lowest Sudra in caste. He used to sit on the banks of the Kaveri in Sri Rangam and sing the names of God. And he was so low caste, he couldn't even go into the temple, but he was allowed to go in the temple at the very end and see the divine form of Lord Ranganatha. And Andal, the foster daughter of Vishnu Chitta or Peri Alwar, Goda, here it says God, but I think he means Goda or Lakshmi. She's considered to be an incarnation of Bhudevi or Lakshmi. And Madhurakavi Alwar, who was the servant of Nam Alwar and did Sharanagati specifically by praising his own acharya. Nam Alwar was his guru, and by praising him in his, all of these persons have written. Vishnu Chitta Peri Alwar has written the Peri Alwar Tirumoli, which the Tirupalanda is very important in the beginning of the things. Tirupan Alwar has written the Amalanadi Piran, which is 10 verses, show about different aspects of the Lord Ranganatha's body, his form, from seeing him from feet to head. Andal has written two famous pasarams or prabandhas. That before I mentioned the Tirupavai, the 30 verses on Lord Krishna and the Gopis in Vrindavan, and also another one called Natya Tirumoli, which is about 150 verses of about her desiring to marry the Lord of Lord Ranganatha. Madhurakavi Alwar only wrote about Namalwa. He praised his guru, and he wrote a very famous prabandha called Kananam Siritamba, which means knotted pieces of thread, which it's an allusion to when the Damodar Leela occurred and Lord Krishna was naughty and Mother Yasoda tied him up to a grinding mortar to keep him from being naughty, and she had to keep tying little pieces of thread together to make the rope long enough to tie Krishna up. So that is called Kananam Siratambu. Excuse me. They all did Sharanagati and referenced places, find a place in their prabandhas. Thus, the philosophy of Sharanagati or surrender is richly reflected in the Alwar's hymns. To conclude, Sharanagati has a hoary origin, has an ancient origin in the Vedas. It is noticed in this context that the literature of Sharanagati and the Alwar's hymns are also very ancient, right? Not as ancient as the Vedas, but still very ancient. Is also found. It is noticed that in this context that the literature of Sharanagati is also found in the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Purana, the Ramayana, and the Bhagavad Gita. Sharanagati has reached its apex or its peak in the lifestyles of the Alwars. Thus, an attempt is made in the above pages to trace the historical development of Sharanagati from the Vedas down through the Alwar's hymns. The post-Alwar Sharanagati literature will be taken up in the ensuing chapter. So here we have all the quotes from the different prabandhas and everything like that. And the next chapter we'll take up next time is going to be chapter 3, Acharya's systematization of Sharanagati or surrender. So, you have any questions about the Alwars and surrender?
Well, yeah, actually two questions, but one comment. The comment being that in the beginning, I don't know if you're hearing. Let's see if I put on my volume. Yeah, in that years ago when I first came to Vaishnavism, it was reading that the life of Sripad Ramanujacharya. They actually started off with the first three Alwars where they were together. I remember that under the shelter of Mridu Muni.
Right.
Yeah. So it was quite inspiring again
So,
to realize that this.
So you can see a hut like that in the background,
yeah.
like a hut like that, and then it just has a small porch. It has a small veranda, and you know you can lie down and out of the rain on that veranda, but only one person can lie down because it's not big enough.
Yeah.
So two people can sit and 3 people can stand.
How could they know it was? I mean, they would know, but just for question's sake, how could one know that it's Sriman Narayana, not some Devatao? Yeah.
Yes, these are you know, these are divine experiences. So
yeah.
So you know, people have mystic experiences all the time. It's an epiphany. People realize that it is. Yeah.
And this was what time period? I forgot to.
Well, it depends. You know, the first 3 they say, okay, the traditional dates are different from maybe the scholarly dates. You know, scholars might place the Alwars sometime before Shankaracharya, so maybe in the 7th, 6th century AD. But you know, the traditional dates of Vaishnava sort of dates they talk about the Alwars, the first three Alwars, or even Tirumalasai Alwar, who is the fourth Alwar, coming, at least the first three, were, first of all, they were considered Ionages. They all took birth from flowers in different places, one in Mahabalipuram, one in Kanchipuram, one in Madras, one in Chennai. Flowers in temple tanks. They took birth from that, so they're called Ionages. They didn't have any mother or father.
Oh.
And so they're mystic, very mystic, you know. And it's said that they took birth in before Kali Yuga, in the last few weeks of Kali Yuga. Yeah, so even Lord Krishna was still on the planet. So that's the traditional time period. Okay, when exactly we don't know. You know, we can't say. But there are traditional days of the appearances. You know, just like we have Lord Rama's appearance, we have Lord Krishna's. I mean, Lord Rama's appearance was so many years ago. How do we know that Ram Navami was the date of Lord Rama's, or Krishna's? When was he born? You know, how do we know that? We only know because, you know, it's written down in the literature. It's written down in the Puranas. It's written down in the literature that they appeared on such and such a day and such a season in such and such a month and under this particular star or on this particular lunar day. So that's how they know, and so they celebrate normally in Sri Vaishnavism. They won't celebrate the passing away of saints. They usually only celebrate the births of saints and avatars and alwars, acharyas.
The passing away. Oh.
It's called in South India the nakshatra, or the star, which governs the day, is considered more important than the tithi. In North India, usually it's the tithi. You know, Janmastami, the Astami tithi, right? Ramanavami, right? But in South India, instead of Janmastami, it'll be Rohini Nakshatra is more important. Krishna took birth in a certain time of year, but under Rohini Nakshatra. So that's why in South India, so in Tamil, people, the Sri Vaishnavas, we refer to the birthday of people as Tiru Nakshatra. They're holy. Tiru means Sri. Sri is Sanskrit. Tiru is Tamil. If you come to Sri Rangam, the place is called Sri Rangam, but some people call it Tiruvarangam. Tiruvarangam means Sri Rangam. Sri Rangam is the Sanskritized version of Tiruvarangam.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So like people say Tirupati, Tirumala, you know, Tiru, all this Tiru everywhere, right? Like that. Well, why is Sri Rangam? I don't know. But some people call it Tiruvarangam. You can call it Tiruvarangam. Of course, today, you know, if you want to send a letter, you have to write Sri Rangam. But devotees know, Vaishnavas know, it's Tiruvarangam.
Oh,
sometimes you see it on signs also, if you can read the Tamil.
Tirupati, Sri Rangam. Yeah. Another question I had on, I don't know if I should ask this in a forum, but the prediction in the Bhagavad Puran 11 canto, chapter verse 38 to 40, you spoke about the prediction of the references made to the three Alwars.
It doesn't say three. It just says that in Kali Yuga, many Vaishnavas, great devotees of the Lord, will be born in southern India, and they will drink the water of the Kaveri and the Tamarapani.
Is this connected to the Bhagavad Mahatma where they said Bhakti Devi, she was drying up, and
Bhakti Devi started in South India and came to North India
and moved, and she moved to Vairag and Gyan. But is this the reference referring to that also, where Bhakti Devi is growing?
I mean, it's generally understood that Bhakti, there are many schools of Bhakti. There are many schools of Bhakti Vedanta. You know, the Bhakti schools of Vedanta, we say. The Bhakti schools of Vedanta are all the different Vaishnava schools, right? There are many schools of devotion. There's even Shaivite devotion in South India, but devotion to the Lord, to Lord Perumal or Lord Tirumal or Lord Vishnu, these are all different names for Vishnu or Srimanarayana. it's all started in South India, basically. The idea is it started in South India. Even the Bhagavatam is considered to be a South Indian text.
Mhm.
So all these things, the devotion started, the devotional scriptures all came out of South India.
South India.
Of course, we can say there are many scriptures that came from all sorts of places in India, like that. Of course, we have to remember that before 1947 there was no India. There were just
India.
different kingdoms.
Principalities,
There
yeah.
was just different states and different kingdoms. So there was King Kulashekara, he was a king in Chera, the Chera kingdom. There was in Tanjore, there were the Chola kings, there were the Pandyans who had their capital in Tanjore. You had other people who had their capitals in different places. The Vijayanagar Empire had his king Krishnadeva had his he had his capital in Hampi, so
Kishkinda, yeah.
you have people in North India. You have the Paliparudra had his king. He was king of Odisha, and so people there were and then you had even in the time of Rama, the King Janaka. They say Mithila is close to Nepal. Yeah. So they have all these different kingdoms, and so different scriptures and things were written by different sages. And of course, the Vedas are eternal, but these other scriptures came into being, and they were written down, and they were propagated. And some of them moved also from Sanskrit into the vernacular. From the Sanskrit Valmiki Ramayana, we get the Ramcharitmanas in Adwari or Hindi. We get the Kamba Ramayana in Tamil. We get different Ramayanas in different languages.
But the second part of this question, and is actually connected to this, many times I heard devotees like Amarendra Das, well, I shouldn't call the names, but particular devotees referring to this as the Bhagavad Puran speaking about Srila Prabhupada.
Did he take birth in South India?
No.
No.
Yeah. So, and then,
I mean, whenever the scriptures say that in Kali Yuga great devotees are going to appear, yeah, sure.
All right.
You can say any devotee that appears in Kali Yuga, you can say is predicted in the scripture, because the scripture predicts great devotees to be. But this particular scripture, Bhagavatam, it says that those devotees will take birth in South India.
Oh yeah.
So it's okay. I mean, if people want to think that their guru or their saints were predicted or something, okay.
Yeah.
Does he have to be predicted to be great?
No.
That's my question. My question, personally, if someone says to me, "Oh, you must come and listen to this master, this great teacher," like that, I said, "Well, okay, I'll come and listen," like that. Or maybe I said, "Well, I don't know if I have time or something." They might say, "Well, you know what? He was actually predicted to come in Kali Yuga and to preach to everybody." Then maybe I become more interested. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So there, this is what we call shastric hyperbole. Sometimes the scriptures, or even the devotees, sometimes people engage in praising, or even overpraising, if it can be said. We can't really overpraise the Lord's devotees or the Lord, because no matter what praise we give them, it's not enough. They're the greatest, right? All of them. All devotees are great. All devotees are the greatest. The Lord is the greatest, like this. So it's impossible to praise them too much. But at the same time, we have to understand what's the reason for praising. The reason for praising is to encourage others to hear from them, to read their words, to understand their teaching, like that. So there's nothing wrong with praising people who are great devotees of the Lord. We shouldn't praise people who are not devotees. We shouldn't, ordinary human beings, like that. But unfortunately, our whole society is around the world, everybody's praising film stars and politicians, These are the people that get praised. Okay, so when we get a chance to praise somebody who is really praiseworthy, a great devotee of the Lord, a great teacher, or the Supreme Lord himself, we should do that, and that we should encourage people to. So there's nothing wrong with praising a devotee. Nothing wrong with praising the Lord like that. Even if it seems excessive praise. Even if it seems excessive praise, okay. So what? No problem.
You said the Alvar's music differ from the Dravid music, normal music, so they don't use Carnatic.
Well, okay, so pretty much if you go to India, you see in North India there's classical music, in North India classical music, in South India. In North India that's called Hindustani, in South India that's called Carnatic. And the Carnatic music has certain flavors about it, certain ragas and things, and the Hindustani also has its own difference like that. There are some others. There are some others too, but these are the two main classical musics of India. Right. So the music, the Alvar is actually Nata Muni, who rediscovered the hymns of the Alvars after they were lost. Most of them were lost for many years. The story is that they were refound. He engaged in putting them to music. He engaged in putting. So in the temples, there's different. Sometimes people do sing. So we have this MS Vasant Kumari. There's one very famous singer who sings Tirupavai like that. So there's MS Subbalakshmi. These are different people. Vasant Kumari is also one lady. So there are different singers who sing the Alvar's prayers, but they sing them in Carnatic style. But in the temples, there's a different style of chanting because like this Palanda, there's a different way of chanting. So there's a way of chanting in the temples, and there's a way of singing also, which is normally like Carnatic style, like that. So there is a different that usually the temple chanting is very important of Prabandhas in all Sri Vaishnava temples, but specifically in Sri Rangam at the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, which is in December, January, which is called Adhyayanotsava, where everybody chants all the 4,000. They chant the 4,000 hymns of the Alvars, and they not only sing it, but they also dance it. They show different hand mudras and dances. The people who know how to do that, there are only traditional people called Aryas, and they wear like a fez-like hat, like a hat with a tilak on it, and they play the little cymbals, and they show the hand mudras, and they make the dances. These people are only in Sri Rangam and in Srivilliputturu, which was the place of Andal, which is right up next to the mountains in Tamil Nadu. If you go right up to the Western Ghats, you go up close to the Western Ghats, just as you come down from the mountains. At the base of the mountains, there's a place called Srivilliputturu. Also a wonderful Vadapatra Sai Krishna, Vishnu lying down. It's called Vadapatra Sai. But Vadapatra Sai is the name of Krishna. There's a baby Krishna that appears at the devastation of the universe on a banyan leaf. So there's a big leaf, and he appears on that, sucking his toe.
Yeah.
That's actually considered to be an Ugra deity in Pancharatra, because he appears at the Pralaya. He appears at the time of destroying the universe. Yeah, interesting. But I have a nice little Vadapatra Sai on my altar, Krishna, little baby Krishna sucking his toe. But so that's another form of Krishna that we don't see very often. And that's where Andal was from. Andal was born. Her foster father, Peri Alvar, found her. He used to make garlands, and he used to grow flowers and tulsi for the deity. And one day he was in his tulsi garden, and he found a little baby girl under a tulsi tree, and brought her up as his own daughter, and she became an Alvar. He was an Alvar, and she became an Alvar. Like that. So that is the place where she came from. And then she loved Krishna so much that she wanted to marry Krishna. So she eventually went to Sri Rangam and married Lord Ranganath and disappeared.
That's Goda.
Goda Devi, yeah.
Goda Devi, all right.
Mandal.
Why I actually asked that question is I was perusing on some article, and they were comparing Madhavacharya, the other three Vaishnava lineages from Madhavacharya, Nimbaditya Acharya, Vallabhacharya, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Vaishnavism, and saying these others were more based on.
There's if you say there's four Vaishnavacharyas, you're talking about Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, Ramanuja, and Madhva. But you know, today we have the Vishnu. There's no Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. It's Ballabha. People follow Ballabha.
Vallabhacharya.
Yeah, people don't have we don't have the works of Vishnu Swami. We only have the works of Ballabha. And Ballabha was contemporary of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has his own sampradaya, basically. He has his own,
Chaitanya sampradaya.
So what's the question?
Why I ask that is because now this person, I don't remember which scholar, was saying that the other schools of Vaishnavism are more based on the Vedas, whereas the Dravid Vedas are more put more importance is put upon them as compared to the normal Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda, and Atharva Veda.
No, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, so Sri Vaishnavism is unique in that it is called Ubhaya Vedanta. There's two Vedantas which are important to Sri Vaishnavas. The Vedas are important, no doubt. The Sanskrit Vedas. And the Tamil, they consider the Tamil Prabandhas of the Alvars to be equal to the Sanskrit Vedas. The Prabandhas are very important. They're the expressions of the realizations and of the great saints of the Alvars.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vedas are also important, which are the expression of the rishis, that they saw the eternal Vedas in their minds, and so the Dravida Veda and the Sanskrit Veda, they're considered equal. They're equal importance in Sri Vaishnavism, but it's not. People shouldn't think that Sri Vaishnavism is just a Tamil cult, and people don't know. They don't know anything about the Upanishads. They don't know anything about Vedanta. They only know about the Prabandhas. That's not true. That isn't true at all. Ramanuja didn't write anything in Tamil. He wrote everything in Sanskrit.
Oh.
When he wrote his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, his commentaries on the Prasthana Traya, Vedanta Sutra, he wrote 3 commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. He wrote a commentary on compilation of quotes from the Upanishads called Vedanta Sangraha. He wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. In those commentaries, he hasn't quoted the Alvars once.
Oh,
he hasn't quoted Tamil one time. In all of those books, there's no Tamil quotation by Ramanuja. He quotes only the Sanskrit Vedas because Ramanuja is trying to
authenticate,
defeat Shankara.
Oh, all right, yes.
Yeah. So if you go to a Shankarite and you say, "Oh, Namalwar says this," he's going to say, "Who cares? Who cares what a Namalwar says? Namalwar is just saying stuff in Tamil." Tell if you want to debate with a Advaitin, if you want to debate with a Mayavadi or a Veda Vedin or whatever, you have to debate another Vedantin. You have to debate with Sanskrit, like that. So all of the Prabandhas and things, these are for people who are already Sri Vaishnavas. We can appreciate the Alvar's feelings and emotions and realizations. We can appreciate that. And Mayavadis can't appreciate that. There's nobody going and preaching the Tamil, the Divya Prabandhas to Mayavadis or to people who are not followers of Ramanuja. That is in-house. We preach that. So we don't preach that to other people because they can't understand. They need to be convinced from the Prasthana Traya, from the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras. They can be convinced. So Sri Vaishnavism is very strong and based on Vedanta, on Sanskrit Vedanta. All the other acharyas are also based on Sanskrit Vedanta. But don't tell me also that these other acharyas don't have, even the Gaudiya Sampradaya, they have Govinda Bhasya, they have books on commentaries on the Prasthana Traya, but they also have books in Bengali.
Yeah.
But if you want to defeat the Kampoti Pitam Sankaracharya or something like that, if you read Chaitanya Charamrita to him, he's saying, forget it. I don't want to hear Chaitanya Charamrita like that. Even though Chaitanya Charamrita is full of Sanskrit verses too. There's many Sanskrit verses in Chaitanya Charamrita. There's many quotations. It's a very philosophical book and it has lots of Sanskrit quotes. But still, because it's a Bengali scripture, nobody will listen to it. So nobody will listen to the Tamil. So that's why the basic, when you want to discuss with people from other groups, other sects and other Vedantas, right? Other followers have different ideas of Vedanta. You have to preach to them. It's just like Christians. If there's one Christian of one sect and one Christian of another sect, and they're discussing things, they will refer to the Bible, right? If a person comes to a Christian and says, well, you know, it says in the Quran you have to do this, the Christian will say, I don't care. I don't care what it says in the Quran. He doesn't follow the Quran, so what does he care? Like that. So, but if you, like a Muslim, if you go to a Muslim and you say, look, it says this in the Quran, you have to do this because it says in the Quran. Oh, yes, he takes it. If you tell a Christian it says so in the Bible, yeah, he accepts it. If you tell a Hindu it's there in the Sanskrit Vedas, everybody accepts it. Prabhupada himself says this in his books. In I think a preface to Isa Upanishad or something like that. He says, in India, people have different ideas. Many people fight and they argue on different points of philosophy and this, that, and the other. They have different ideas of how to live the life and different rules in different societies. But if somebody says to you, you have to do this, you have to accept it, you have to accept this, or you have to do this, and the person will say, why? Why do I have to say this? A very famous thing that the Bengalis always say, why? Why should I accept? You tell somebody, you tell some devotee something, no, why should I accept that? Right? Prabhupada says, if they say why, if you say, it's a Vedic injunction, it's in the Vedas.
It's a Upanishad,
yeah, then Prabhupada says in his Upanishad preface, he says, if they say it's a Vedic injunction, if it's a Vedic injunction, it has to be followed. Maybe if it's in Manu Samhita, you don't have to follow it. It's Apastamba Dharma Sutra, maybe you don't have to. There's many things that sometimes are contradictory. But if it's in the Vedas, if it's in the Upanishads, it has to be accepted. It's a Vedic injunction. Everybody will accept that. That's what Prabhupada said. And so that's why mostly all the Vedantas, all the schools of Vedanta, they accept the Vedas as the ultimate pramana. Now, of course, you know, Gaudiyas have this idea that Bhagavad Purana is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra, it's the national commentary on Sutra. Okay, but 250 years ago, in 1750, in Jaipur, the Ramanandis were saying, okay, prove it. And the Gaudiyas were saying, well, Bhagavatam, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying, no, prove it in Sanskrit and from the Vedas. Prove you're bona fide by the Vedas. Oh, then Baladev had to make a commentary on, you know, whether you agree or not agree. There are some people like Prem Prayojan and other people like that. They'll say, oh, we don't agree. We think the Bhagavatam is more important than the Vedas. It's the most important scripture like that. Fine. You think it's more important. And if you meet a Christian, he thinks the Bible's more important. And a Muslim thinks the Quran is more important. And a Sri Vaishnava, maybe there are Sri Vaishnavas who say, no, the Alwar's prayers are more important for me. Okay, everybody has their own little thing and that's why everybody's fighting and nobody can discuss with each other because they don't have anything in common. So that's why the Vedas are the common scripture. And everybody has supreme faith in the Vedas in India, even people who are not Vedantins, they follow the Vedas. There are Saddarshanas, yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Purvamimamsa, Uttramamsa, they all depend on the Vedas. They're all quoting the Vedas, all those people. So, you know, there's six main schools, apart from Vedanta. We're only talking about Vaishnavas and Shankara and, you know, people who follow Vedanta. There are five other schools that follow the Vedas that we don't follow like that, but they accept the Vedas. So that's why there's a huge system in India where everybody can talk to each other and everybody can discuss. And on the basis of the Vedas and the Upanishads, they can agree or disagree like that. But if you just say, well, you know, I don't care what it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Tiruvai it says something different, you know, then you can't talk to each other. So the reason for emphasizing the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita is that these are common scriptures which everybody glorifies, everybody finds useful, and therefore we can discuss them. You know, we can discuss together. There are different outlooks on the Gita. There are definitely different outlooks on the Gita, on the Vedanta Sutras, on the Upanishads, different outlooks like that. So what those different outlooks are, I mean, basically all the Vaishnavas agree, right? We are all meant to surrender and to worship Krishna. But you know, there are other people who also accept the Gita, but they don't accept even Krishna as God, but they accept the Gita like that. So we can argue with them and say, hey, you know, this is why you should accept this, because this is, and you haven't understood it correctly, you know, like that. But there's not even a chance to discuss with people if I say to you, or if I say to a Muslim, you know, you should listen to Tiruvai Moli. He doesn't know. He doesn't even know Tamil. He doesn't know who is an Alwa. Who cares? Like that. So that's why the Vedas are important. They're very, very important because they are the Prasthanatraya, the Gita, the Vishnu Sahasranam, the Upanishads, and especially the major Upanishads, at least 8 or 12 major Upanishads, if not 108, and Vedas and the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras. Yeah.
Actually, I think the person who put that and wasn't a devotee. It was on a Tamil side where the person they were trying to separate the Tamil language and Tamil tradition from Sanskritic culture.
Yeah, some people do that. You know, even if you read
Agitation.
There's a book by Dasgupta, History of Indian Philosophy. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that, there's many volumes, and he talks about Chaitanya, he talks about Madhva, he talks about Ballabha, he talks about Nimbarka, he talks about Gaudiya, he talks about Sri Vaishnava, Ramanuja, he talks about you know, all of the different things. He talks about so many things, Spota, Purva Mimamsa, everything. He talks about everything. He says very clearly, he's a Bengali. He was a great scholar. He wrote it. I've got it on my shelf here, and I have it in PDF form. Okay, it's important. It's a reference book. You can read everything about. He says, I have to admit that when I wrote about Sri Vaishnavism, I could only write about part of it because I don't speak Tamil. So I wrote only about the Sanskrit parts. But there's a whole Tamil tradition as well, which is part of Sri Vaishnavism, and that I don't have any access to because I don't speak Tamil. So that is important.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas he's a Bengali, so he can know the Bengali parts of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It's like that. You know, you have Marathi Vaishnavism, you have Nepali Vaishnavism, you have people worship. You have Vaishnavas in Thailand. You have Vaishnavas in Cambodia.
Shankaradev.
You have people in Assam and Manipur and these places, Tripura, Meghalaya, Nagaland. You have people way out there. You know, you have Hindus, even Vaishnavas. I heard there are Vaishnavas in Sri Lanka even, but few. But you know, and then with the Indian diaspora, you have people in Fiji, you have people in Trinidad, you have people in South Africa, you have Australia, you have England, UK, everywhere, right? So these people, they also develop their own traditions too, like that. And now, because of Srila Prabhupada and because of preaching Vaishnavism all over the world, you have foreigners, you know, you have white people and black people and Europeans and Asians, all sorts of people becoming, you know, learning Vedanta, becoming Vaishnavas, you know, becoming Gaudiya Vaishnavas or even other types of Vaishnavas, whatever, you know. So there's going to be more and more different sects and more and more different traditions and customs. It's impossible to stop it.
So as a ending of this question, so in order to unite the Vaishnav world or to have like, you know, a vision like the Vishwa Vaishnav Raj Sabha, World Vaishnava Association.
Okay.
You must have.
First of all, why do you, if Vaishnavism is growing like a tree,
Yeah.
why do you want to cut all the branches off and just have one trunk? Is that a very healthy tree?
No.
No. So let it grow. If there are
Alright.
different sects, what's the problem? Why the problem? You know? So if there's a bogus sect or something like that, it may dry up. Just like a tree may have one limb and it may shrivel, right?
Yeah.
And no fruits come there. And another limb bears a lot of fruits. And some of the fruits on one place is sweet and some are sour in another place. So Vaishnavism is like that. It'll grow. It'll naturally grow. But we all have many things in common, many common things. But there are also some things which are individual and unique about each particular sampradaya, and that's great. And we shouldn't. Why should we try to get rid of those?
Yeah.
Do we want everybody to join ISKCON, or everybody to
No.
join the Gaudiya Math, or everybody to become a Sri Vaishnava? No. We want everybody to surrender to the Lord. And Krishna says, as they surrender unto me, so I reward them. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So there are many ways to serve Krishna. So if you want to do it one way or another way, some people they very much want to do it they like Tamil culture, they like Bengali culture, they like Marathi culture, they like Gujarati culture, they like Vrindavan culture, or they like Western culture even, but they want to add Vedanta to it. They want to add Krishna to it. So it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Not a problem. I don't have a problem with it. Problem is when people try to put things in a box and it stunts it from growing.
Yeah.
Let things grow. Why not? Yeah. So I have no problem with all sorts of varieties of Vaishnavism.
Vaishnavas, yeah.
Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya.